Good evening to all of you. Well, it's fantastic to have so many of you online tonight, and it's a real honor and a privilege for IPS and private property, real estate investor, and wealth migrate to be bringing you another great webinar. It's also a real honor and a privilege to have Ryan online tonight, Ryan Pinnock. He's coming live from London, and wow, we live in a very small world. So, welcome, Ryan. It's great to have you online as well.
Cool. Hello, everybody. Good to have you online.
Tell us, what are you doing there in London, Ryan? What's happening? It must be pretty cool with them winning the British Lions and an Englishman, well, a Brit winning Wimbledon.
Uh, you know, if Murray lost Wimbledon, they would have reminded us that he's Scottish. That's how it tends to work here. I've actually got lots of investments here myself, Scott, and I come up every now and then just to check them out. Although to be fair, I'm not really investing in anything new here. It's just ongoing management and looking at opportunities in the US. So yeah, there's a lot of people interested in the US here as well. We're finding that more UK investors are looking at America now, just with the type of returns that they're getting. So there's plenty of opportunity everywhere, as you know.
Yep. No, fantastic. Well, look, I mean, at the end of the day, Ryan and I were going to put this webinar together and very much focus on the US and the opportunities there. And there's a number of questions. I can see Fritz has sent through a question here. Mark sent through a question. Guys, we will answer all your questions, so don't you worry about that. But I had the real honor and privilege of meeting George Ross. And last Thursday, I played golf with him. I actually shared a golf cart with him. So you don't really get to spend more time, more quality time with a guy of his caliber. And to be honest, I hijacked it a little bit with Ryan, but I thought, geez, the information's so pertinent, it's so relevant that we should really start off this webinar tonight and just give you an overview in terms of the market and what he thinks, the global economy, the American property market, the global property market, the South African property market. And for me, I asked him so many fascinating questions, and I wish someone had taken a picture of me because I don't know if you've ever played golf, Ryan, but where you were literally using the dictaphone on your cell phone and you would ask the guy questions, and then you'd go off to play your shot, and hopefully, without him seeing, you were like trying to record all the information into your phone so that you didn't forget it all by the end of the round.
Maybe there's a new product there with a club and dictaphone, but yeah, it sounds like an amazing experience. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to share about that, actually. So yeah, I'm very excited about that.
Perfect. Well, let's rock and roll. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of people might not have heard of George Ross. Just my interest, can I just see a show of hands? I know that we always try and keep people, entertained, and the more you participate, the more you're actually going to learn. So, who here has heard of George Ross, and who is he? Can anyone answer that question? If you can just type it in the box, you'll see there's a box up in the right-hand corner, and if you just type away, you'll be able to let us know. So, tell us what it is, who he is, where have you seen him, what's his relationship. So Andrew says yes. Yes, what Andrew? Who is he? Let's before I tell you guys, I'm quite interested to see if anyone knows. So Mark says I'm sure I know him from The Apprentice. Peter says Donald's coach. Seen him on Apprentice being fired. Donald Trump's right hand man. You're fired, Brendan. Andrew. Okay. So quite a few people know who he is. I think I'll just run through it a little bit. He's the most fascinating man. He's actually 85 years old. I've never seen anything like it, Ryan. He literally landed from an airplane from New York in South Africa, Johannesburg, on Thursday morning at about 8 o'clock. And at 10:30, he was on the golf course playing golf with me. And I have to say, I mean, you and I have done that international trip together. It's unbelievable that an 85-year-old can literally land. I mean, granted, he flies first class, but still land and come and play a day's golf. I found it absolutely fascinating. He's basically been with the Trumps since
Hopefully, you're
1970s.
going to share some of these travels.
What's that, sorry?
I was going to say, hopefully, you're going to share some of these travel secrets with us because I wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, don't even joke. Don't even joke. So he's been with Donald Trump since the 1970s. He's a major part of the Apprentice show, as we all know. They became friends, and he's represented Trump in most of the major deals during the 1980s and 1990s. In 1996, George Ross became bored with his legal practice. He's effectively a lawyer, and Trump actually offered him a job to work full time with him. Trump said of Ross, he's a tough, firm but fair, a very brilliant lawyer, and I trust his judgment. He's the author of two books, Trump's Strategies for Real Estate and Trump Style Negotiation. So, from my perspective, you'll probably recognize this. There you've got The Apprentice, and that's George Ross on the left-hand side. Everyone knows who Donald Trump is. And then on the left-hand side here, you've got the Trump Style Negotiation. Now, I actually haven't read this book, and someone was recommending it to me on the golf course and said it's an absolutely fascinating book in terms of who he is and the negotiation style. Because, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail, but I was trying to ask him how him and Donald Trump actually work together, and he pretty much said that Donald Trump does the broad strokes. Like he looks at loads of proposals every single day, and then he hands them over to George, who's the devil in the detail. He goes in and actually negotiates, and he's done more big real estate deals with Donald Trump than anyone else. He's done more big real estate deals in New York than anyone else, and he's actually been Donald Trump's right hand man, his number one confidant for the last 40 years. He's his real estate lawyer, and most importantly, he's actually his mentor as well. And so, without further ado, I actually asked him, and as you can imagine, on a golf course, I asked him loads of questions. But what I tried to do was put them into 10 major areas, and I'm going to answer those 10 major areas for you. And then once I've answered those 10 major areas, I'll kind of give you, if there's a little bit of extra stuff, because I literally took notes. I spent the whole weekend with the guy, so I got to learn a huge amount from him. So my question, just before we get started, is who are you learning for? I think you might have said this, Ryan. Richard Branson says that you're only as successful and you're only as good as the 6 closest people that you spend time with. Now, my question is, who are you spending time with? Is it your friends? Is it your family? Is it people more successful than you? Is it people less successful than you? Are you basing decisions on your gut feel? Are you being persuaded by the media? What are you actually doing? Is it a friend of yours that's telling you, that American thing's rubbish, man. There's lots of scam artists. Or if you invest overseas, you're a traitor to South Africa. Or are you reading the negative press, etc., etc.? My question is, who are you actually hanging time with? And just as a matter of interest, and I'm sure, Ryan, you've also got some pretty impressive names, but I mean, just in the last 3 months, I've had the privilege of spending time and learning from Richard Branson, Tony Robbins, Robert Gumedi, who's one of the wealthiest billionaires in South Africa, Clem Santa, Dr. D. Martini, and even Amy Kleinhans, who is Miss South Africa 1992. So, really, it is amazing that if you spend time with the best people in the world, surely it's common sense that you're going to be lifted up to that level. Would you agree with me on that, Ryan? We've lost Ryan there. So,
Yes, absolutely, Scott.
okay. So, just some
No,
pictures.
no, no. Yeah. Sorry, but I think it's a bit slower here because I'm in London and the link's coming through.
No worries, mate. No worries. So, just in case there's any doubting Thomases out there, you can see that I was in IPS colors with my IPS shirt on, and there is George and I sharing the golf cart, and then a couple of other pictures. You can see the 4 ball we were playing in, and we were both a bit grumpy at one point because there were some very slow golfers up ahead of us. But anyway, it's the whole purpose of the day was actually to meet him and to spend time with him. So, what I wanted to do was to run through 10 questions that I actually asked him. So I said to him, what do you think of the American economy and particularly the banking industry? At the end of the day, the American banking industry started the whole subprime crisis. And his statement here, and I recorded all of this so that I could actually go back and write it down. He was very bullish about the banks as they have a lot of money on their balance sheet at the moment. And the only way for them to make money is to actually start lending. So he sees them coming back into the market. The next question, and it was also in terms of the economy and what was happening. I said, do you think there could be a double dip or another subprime crisis? He said that would never happen again with regards to another subprime crisis. The SEC, before the subprime crisis, actually looked, now the SEC is the controlling body, actually looked 23 times in terms of the reckless lending. And they've completely changed the framework now in terms of the practice and how the banks lend and how they actually go about it. The third question I asked him was, where are the best opportunities in America? Now, interestingly enough, when I was on the golf course, he just told me straight outright. And I was absolutely fascinated that the top 3 markets he mentioned were Atlanta, New York, and Memphis. Now, Ryan, we're going to go into a little bit more detail later. We've investigated over 17 different markets, but I found it incredibly gratifying that 3 out of the 4 markets we were investing in were the first 3 cities that came to mind when he actually, when I asked him where the best places were to invest. I'm not sure if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I was wondering actually if he's actually seen any of our previous webinars, and that's where he gets his credible information from, because it's quite astounding that out of 50 states in the US, he's nailed 3 out of the we're investing in 3 out of the 4 that he mentioned. So I don't know, maybe he's watched one of your webinars in the past there, Scott.
I hope so. Well, we'll certainly get him to watch one of the webinars in the future. The other thing that we
Yeah.
asked him a lot about, and for those of you who've been on the buyers trip, we do quite a lot of stuff in Journal Square. And our Journal Square is in New Jersey, which is 3 stops from New York. And he says there's lots of in the past there were lots of residential opportunities in Manhattan, and he was always worried about an oversupply. But now there's a real demand in New York, and particularly in New Jersey, for residential accommodation, particularly as Manhattan and the World Trade Center is coming. Now, for those of you who don't know, the World Trade Center has 500,000 square feet of retail and 1 million square feet of office space. And he's actually a bit concerned about an oversupply from an office space perspective. But from a residential perspective, there's going to be a lot of demand. And he actually went on to say that, the World Trade Center worries him a bit because obviously it's going to be a bit like a tomb or a morgue because, of all the people that died there. But he said, don't doubt that the government will make sure that they make a plan there. And he went on to say that Donald Trump was very bullish on property and particularly land, as you can buy it very cheap and sit on it. So I found that fascinating also with what regards to what we're doing in terms of the land purchases and everything else. The fourth question I asked is, what is Donald Trump's system for investing? How does he look at so many deals? How does he make sure that he's not making mistakes? And I'm not sure, Ryan, if you're aware of this, but it's a very, for the people who were at the breakfast, it's the exact same strategy as Warren Buffett. And I'm just interested to know if anyone actually knows what Donald Trump's strategy is before I tell you. So Raboni says he uses the 110-3-1 principle. That's Dr. Dolph DeRuis, Raboni. But okay, so very interesting. I can see that not too many people have come through here. So really what he does is he actually pays an advisor to tell him all the problems with an investment. And that advisor only gets paid if he can persuade Donald Trump not to invest in the project. So what happens is that advisor goes out and as John Chin always says, compensation drives behavior. And they go out and they actually do the analysis on the property. They come back with all the negatives. Then George Ross, who's his attorney, goes through all those negatives and they present to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump then has the ability, because every deal in the world, every investment in the world has pros and it has cons. And he then has the opportunity to know what all the downsides are. And then his logic is if he can manage the downside, then everything else is upside. And I've actually got a quote a little bit later that I'm going to share with you. And I thought that was absolutely awesome because John Chin is actually online tonight. And John has this website, Deal Kill, in America. And, we've partnered with John. We've Henny, my business partner, literally chose John in August last year out of all the American partners we met as the number one guy who was the most authentic, the most thorough, the guy that looked at the fundamentals, the guy that could look at all the markets and determine where the best opportunities were. And we actually approached him and said, John, we would really like you to be able to do the analysis where you really take out deals. And it's really serendipitous sometimes in life how it works out, because he turned around to us and said, oh, well, it's actually quite funny. I've got a website, called Deal Kill. And we found that absolutely fascinating because it's just funny how the universe works sometimes. And then from our side, a lot of you would have seen this before, but in terms of Brendan and myself and Ryan and the rest of the IPS team, we've got a system that's a very sophisticated system, which is built on Clem Sunter's model. And we use the system to be able to drill down in terms of investing in different countries, which countries to invest in, which markets to invest in, which partners to invest in. And this is just an overview in terms of our global property system. I'm not going to go into it in detail tonight. We are actually finishing a book with Clem Sunter and we'll be done. The aim is to have it finished by the end of August. And I know I've been saying that for a long time, but we've got a deadline now to get it sorted. So if you are interested in that, we've got other webinars. You can go and check it out. But the bottom line is you've got to have a system for investing, and George took us through that system. The fifth one was, how does Donald Trump invest globally? Now, I found this absolutely fascinating because, as you know, the Trump brand is all over the place. It's not in South Africa, funny enough. But they've got a philosophy, and this philosophy is very, very simple. And I'm not sure, Ryan, if you would like to take a guess on what it is, or if anyone else would like to take a guess as to how Donald Trump invest so successfully globally in terms of property. Anyone else out there got any ideas so that you can help Ryan out here?
How does he invest through IPS, I would imagine. If he was wise, he would do that.
You know what the fascinating thing is that Peter Penhall has said it. He said he always has a local partner, and funny enough, Peter, you're spot on, and it's the exact same philosophy as IPS. You know, we always say that actually investing is quite simple. You've got to have the right information and the right partners. And funny enough, I actually asked George, and I said, you know, what happens if an international investor goes into a foreign market without a local partner? And he said, well, if you're investing overseas and you don't have a local partner, you're destined to fail. And you'll actually see if you watch that little interview that I did with him, I mentioned the word, you know, destined to fail. And he categorically turned around and he said, I didn't say destined to fail. I said you will fail. So his attitude, and I would suggest you go and watch that little video recording that I did. But their attitude is that they go and find a partner on the ground. They find a best of breed partner. They partner with that partner where that partner is bringing something to the table and they are bringing something to the table. They work in a joint venture on a 50-50 basis where Trump brings the brand and the expertise and the local partner brings the experience. They understand the market. They understand the local politics. They understand the economy. They understand the fundamentals and the supply and demand. And what I find absolutely fascinating is that with 10 years experience of what we've been doing, that's the exact same model that we're working on when we invest internationally. So I found it very gratifying, Ryan, that you know, one of the best investors internationally has a model that's very similar to what we're doing in terms of our own investments and also helping our clients. I asked him about crowdfunding. Now I'm not sure if any of you have actually seen this, but he actually sponsored a website called Fund Anything, and there was a whole long write up about how with Donald Trump, it was all on this website here called crowdsourcing.org, and it was going into how crowdsourcing is really now moved from an immature fledgling industry into a mature industry because when the big players like Donald Trump are getting into it. Now, for those of you who don't know what crowdfunding is, please go and look it up. It's one of the biggest trends changing the world in terms of investment, in terms of projects, and we in terms of Wealth Migrate have a way from a crowdfunding platform to be able to revolutionize the property industry. And I did ask him, I said, what do you think of crowdfunding? And he actually, George Roth, wasn't that impressed by it. He said that the problem with crowdfunding in America and even this Fund Anything is that they don't leave enough fat on the bone in terms of the actual investors. So the crowdfunders are taking too much off the top in terms of the investments. And I chatted with him for a long time and I said, well, that's no different to a syndication or a property fund. And he said, correct. You know, I just looked at one of the big um, property funds here, one of the opportunity funds in Australia. They were taking 15% off the top before the investor made 1 cent. And I explained to him our model, which is completely different, where there are absolutely no fees whatsoever. There are no returns whatsoever for the company running it. And the investor makes the first return. And only after the investor's made money do we actually share in the upside. And I told him about the hurdle rate, and he said that it was fantastic. It had the transparency for the investor. The only thing that he told me was that my hurdle rate was too high. And so, Michael, I can see you online. So if you're lucky that George Ross doesn't have anything to do with it, because he says we should drop the hurdle rate. The next question I asked him was, what about South African property market? And just as a matter of interest, you know, it's quite interesting how bullish the Americans are on the South African property market, and particularly the low-income housing. But they did say that there's a massive demand here, but the bottom line is that they need to be able to provide financing for the developers because there's real demand, but they actually need to deliver. And he said the fundamentals were right here, but it was quite interesting because we had a lot of going back and forth where I said, yes, I agree with you on the fundamentals, but as an investor, the big issue I've got is the right to property ownership and being able to get rid of my tenant, et cetera, et cetera. So it was fascinating having that to and fro with him in terms of the pros and cons and where the law protects you, et cetera, et cetera. But the bottom line is, from his perspective, is that particularly in the low income sector, there's a lot of demand, and when the fundamentals of property are right, that's when the property market is stable. I also asked him, what do you think about people being so concerned in South Africa? He's been here a number of times. He's been hunting before and come out to the game reserves. And he said he can completely understand the problem that we've got in South Africa, because whether you're running a company or whether you're running a country, you've got to have leadership. And if you've got weak leadership in a team, then you're going to get bad results for the team. And he said he completely understands where we are in South Africa and the concerns that people have with South Africa because of the leadership and the lack of leadership that we've actually got in the country. I then said to him, I said, I'm not sure if you're aware, but do you know that the Rand has actually lost 21% against the US dollar in the last 6 months? And he was pretty flabbergasted by that and how that's actually impacted the wealth of local investors. And we debated at length, the pros and cons of investing locally versus investing offshore. But he did say to me that, it's a real concern in terms of the impact that it has on someone's return, because on the treadmill, you've just got to run that much faster to be getting returns that are outperforming the Rand devaluation. And, he did say in terms of markets, it's all about timing. And that, I think, is one of the most important things. And I know that's why, from the IPS team, we try so hard to bring people like James Painter and John Chin to be able to give you the expertise in the market so that you can make the right decisions in terms of the actual timing of the different markets, not only from a currency, but from a property perspective. And then lastly, can I just ask, is this of value to people? Are you learning lots? Do you want some more? Because I've got about another 5 pages of notes here. Who would like to get some more information on this guy? Okay, so I can see lots of people are interested. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to run through some more things in terms of some more notes that I made. As I said, I spent 3 days with him, but the best part was actually on the golf course where it was just me and him, because I could actually really ask him the personal questions. So just in terms of who he is, we've explained a lot about who he is. At the age of 85, he still works for Donald Trump. He's on the 26th floor of Trump Towers. And actually, interestingly enough, in New York and in the real estate sectors, he's known as the #1 negotiator. He's been a lawyer for over 50 years. He's done some of the biggest real estate deals, as I mentioned. And he's also a professor at NYU, which is New York University, for the last 20 years on negotiation. Now, tonight's not about teaching you about negotiation, but he did a whole course on negotiation, and it was absolutely fascinating. He started working with Donald Trump when Donald Trump was 27 years old. And what actually happened was Donald Trump's father was a successful developer, but there was an opportunity for the Commodore Hotel, which was on the corner of 42nd and 27th in New York. At the time, New York was down in the dumps. Occupancy in terms of hotels was only 23%. But Donald Trump had the ability to convince people. He went and convinced the railroad that they should give up their rights to the property because they owed the state or the city $14 million. He said that if he paid the railroad $15 million for the land, they would immediately pay it over to the city and pay off the debt. So he got access to the land. He then went and he persuaded the building that was actually there, that was sitting derelict, and actually took it over from the guy so that they basically had no tax consequences. He then went to the Hyatt Hotel, and he got the Hyatt Hotel to agree that he went to the bank first, and the bank said that they would lend as long as the Hyatt Hotel as long as they had a big name player in terms of hotels, and he got the Hyatt Hotel. And this whole thing took over 4 years to put together. But the bottom line is he created the most magnificent hotel. It revolutionized the whole of downtown Manhattan. And his motto from that day on was, "We will do something different." And it put him on the map. And that, for me, is one of the most fascinating things. George Ross said that in terms of real estate, there's no bubble, but the real estate market has cycles. And you have to be able to ride the bubble. You have to be able to figure out what you can do in a deal. You have to figure out what is the worst case scenario and then work out the probability of whether it will happen. You need to work out what will happen in terms of medium case, and then you need to work out what you have to in terms of best case. You need to understand if you can manage the downside. And if you can manage the downside, then everything is upside, which is very similar to what my uncle taught me, who's a stockbroker. But he said the #1 thing you do is that you don't bet the ranch. Mark has asked me the question, why is he still working? And Mark, I thought I answered that right up front. But it actually said here, they asked him, why are you still working? And he said, why would I want to retire? I'm having too much fun. It keeps me young. Mark, it's been a very long time since I met someone with this much energy, and he was 85 years old. He's absolutely incredible. But he also likes giving back. which I think is absolutely awesome. And that's one of the reasons he came out to South Africa to spend time with property people and entrepreneurs to give back and to teach them the lessons that he knows. We asked an interesting question. What is the best structure to invest in America? Now, interestingly enough, anyone who's been on a webinar, we spend a lot of time going through that. And I know, Ryan, we're going to go through it in a bit more detail. But can anyone tell me what the best structure is to invest in America? Okay, I can see Anthony has said an LLC, Mark said an LLC, Heather said an LLC, Menno said an LLC, Valdi said an LLC. So nice, guys. I can see a lot of people there that have actually invested, and you're exactly right. It's an LLC, and it was very interesting that that he mentioned that it was an LLC. I also met with another real estate attorney who was out here with him, and one of the attorneys now that currently work with him, and he also said the LLC was the best structure. So it's fantastic to hear that we're constantly having this affirming in terms of that we're doing the right thing, that we're setting up people in the right structures. And I do think that one thing I would say just off the top of my head there, Ryan, and, I'm not in the game of bashing competitors, but I know that there's one class clown running around South Africa, and all he does is sell people properties in their own name. And I personally think it's completely negligent because you're putting people in a very compromising position later down the line. If we did that, we would be grossly negligent. And people need to understand the consequences of not buying not buying in an LLC in terms of their own name. And I know that Brendan has said, please explain what an LLC is. It's a limited liability company, and I'm going to, Ryan and I are going to go into that in a little bit more detail. Fritz has asked about a trust. There are such things as land trust, Fritz, but trust me, we have spoken to so many people, be it now in terms of George Ross, where it's Dr. Dolph de Roos, our accountant, our lawyer. I mean, honestly, we've heard it from so many people, and the LLC is the way forward in terms of how you actually do it. Winky has asked us to explain the LLC. We will do that. Donald Trump has said that the reason that he uses George as his number one man is that he's not a yes man. He tells him as he sees it. But interesting enough, they don't socialize together. So he's there as a mentor and a coach, but he tells him as he sees it. The Trump name adds 30 to 40% of a value to a project. So I find that absolutely fascinating. And this was the part where I asked him about foreigners, and he said foreigners going into another country must fail. Those were his exact words. Must fail if they do not work with a local partner. So, I found it very interesting because quite a few South Africans are quite arrogant, and they think to themselves, well, they're hell of a successful in South Africa. So all they're going to do is jump on an airplane and fly over to Sydney or London or Atlanta, and they're going to find a property themselves, and they're going to do the renovation themselves, and they're going to find a management agent themselves. And it's interesting that the best in the world, use things as hard as they will fail. Like if you go overseas and you don't have a local partner, you will fail. And I find it fascinating that, we've been trying to tell people that from our own personal experience, but guys like George Ross and Donald Trump are telling us exactly the same thing. So, just in terms of, why we invest in America, I think this is a very important component of what we do and why we actually do it. And, really to answer that question, one of the reasons for us is that the Rand is devalued by 21% against the US dollar since the 1st of January. And unfortunately, whether we like it or not, unless you own an offshore company, unless you own an offshore property or asset, unless you have a first world income, your net worth has devalued by 21% this year. So unless you have worked that hard to have created growth of more than 21%, you are 21% down. The other thing that we like is that the laws, the laws are in favor of the landlord. Literally, you can get an eviction. Some places as little as 3 weeks. In other places, it's as long as 4 to 6 weeks. You've got to be very specific in America whether they're a landlord-friendly state or a tenant-friendly state. But in a first world country, the law acts in favor of the property owner, and that's something that we really like. This is a first world country, and in a first world country, things work. People do what they say. I always find it absolutely fascinating. South Africans come over on our buyers trips, and they think to themselves, let's try and punch holes in this. People are always trying to screw me. How can I make sure that I'm successful? And that I'm not going to get screwed, and I keep my eyes open. In the first world, don't get me wrong, you've got to go in with your eyes open. But people aren't out there to screw each other over. And I love working in South Africa, and I love living in South Africa. But wow, we've really got to have eyes in the back of our head to make sure that things don't go wrong. The other thing is in America is we've got a fully managed service, so it's turnkey. It helps you right through the process. I like to do it because it provides me with wealth preservation, financial security, and a quality of life for my children. Because, at the end of the day, if I've got first world assets and a first world income, then I've got the freedom to do and make whatever decisions I want, both for myself and for my family. And lastly, in terms of a plan B, it provides me with a protection against the uncertainty in terms of where we are, and really wealth preservation, as we spoke about. So, that's why we invest offshore. That's one of the reasons why we invest in America. Now, I know, Ryan, you've asked me this question, and a lot of people always ask us the question. They say, well, why do you only invest in certain areas? And they think that, it's just because we don't have the time or the money to have gone and checked out other areas. And I thought that it would be pretty interesting to just start off and show people how many cities that we've actually been to personally and investigated. When Brendan and I went over in April last year, we did 8 cities in 11 days. Now, I'm not sure if people understand the intensity of that. We would arrive in a city at about 11 o'clock at night. We would catch a taxi to our hotel. We would sleep for about 6 hours. We would get up at 6 a.m. We would pack our bags. We would load all our bags into a taxi. We would catch a taxi to our partner who would drive us around for a day. The partner would drop us off at the airport. We would fly to another city and we would do cut, copy, paste. And interestingly enough, people say to me, well, how the hell could you understand New York or Atlanta in a day? And I come back to our philosophy. We have a very, very simple philosophy. An area has to tick 3 boxes. It has to have the right partner. That is our number one criteria. I do not care how successful a market is. If you do not have the right partners on the ground, you will not succeed, guaranteed. Secondly, there needs to be a demand. The fundamentals need to be right. There needs to be a demand for a tenant. You need to be able to generate an income. If you don't have an income on a property, you do not have an investment. So the fundamentals of property need to be right. And thirdly, the partner needs to have an end-to-end solution to help you be able to execute on that opportunity. So you can see the different cities that we've been to. Literally in the last 18 months, we've been over to America 5 times in the last, well, it's not quite 18 months, the last 14 months or so. Plus, I know that Brendan was there in 2011. I was there in 2010. So we've done extensive analysis of different areas. We've been to New York, Boston, San Diego, Las Vegas, Phoenix, Los Angeles, Tampa, Orlando, Detroit, North Dakota, Atlanta, Memphis, Miami, Oklahoma, Charlotte, San Francisco, and New Orleans. And just to show you, these are the 4 markets that we are investing in at the moment. And the reason being, for me, and I'm going to go into it in more detail as to why these areas. But before we go into those areas, why not actually go backwards and say, why are we not investing in some of the other areas? So Boston is north of New York, very expensive. The market didn't really drop too much. So the fundamentals weren't right. But the number one reason, we didn't have a partner. San Diego, we went to San Diego, Brendan and I. The prices were really, really expensive. And in California, you don't get the yields. There's massive debt in California. It's a tenant-friendly state, so it's very difficult to get rid of a tenant. And more importantly, in terms of the rates and taxes, it's one of the highest, I think it's actually the highest tax state in the whole of America. So that didn't work for us. We actually had a partner on the ground there, a really nice guy, but it didn't tick all of the boxes. We went to Las Vegas. Las Vegas had great opportunities, great discounts, but it's also got the highest unemployment in America. So what is the point of having a property that you buy at a great discount if you can't actually get a tenant? And again, in Vegas, we couldn't find a partner on the ground that we could trust. We went to Phoenix. There was no partner on the ground, but we looked at the fundamentals. The properties were too expensive. The market in Phoenix was one of the first to boom after the crash. And so for me, the fundamentals weren't right. You were buying at prices that were too high. The yields were too low. Los Angeles is the same as San Diego in terms of being in California. Tampa is a holiday town. And for us, again, we haven't found a partner there. We haven't found the deals there. And it's just a market that I personally went there in 2010 and I really didn't like it. I know, don't get me wrong, it's absolutely beautiful and I'd like to live there, but I'm not sure if I'd want to invest there. Orlando is one of the places we're investing. Detroit, 25% of the city of Detroit is literally being evacuated. They've shut down 25% of the city. It relies on one industry in terms of the car industry, which is going nowhere. So it's an old place. It's broken down. It's rusty. And yes, you can pick up these great deals. But I mean, I've met doctors. I've met more South Africans that have taken pain in Detroit than anywhere else in America. And my good friend, the class clown, loves Detroit. But I've met people that have been told 40% rental guarantees and over 12 months they've earned like $200 because on paper it looks good, but in reality it's not. North Dakota is a market that's fascinating. It's where the oil is. You can get really high yields there. But our partner John Chin has been there and he recommends it. He says it's absolutely fantastic. I personally chose not to go there with Brendan on the first trip because it's minus 30 degrees, and really I wasn't that excited about going to a place that's minus 30. But John says the fundamentals are so wonderful that we need to go back. And so next week, this time next week, I think it's Wednesday next week, we're flying to North Dakota. We're going to go and check it out. Atlanta and Memphis, I'll go through in more detail. Miami already is back at full value. It's at the same price it was prior to the crash. It's all the South American money has come in, and therefore you're buying at really high prices, lower yields. It's not a market to look at. Oklahoma, now that's another one. And, again, we've got so much respect for John and his ability to find the right opportunities. He's been looking at this for a year. And really, I'm really excited. I'm going over to America on Sunday, and we're going to go and check out Oklahoma. I personally haven't been to Charlotte, but my partners have been to Charlotte. Again, it's not a market we like. It doesn't have the partners on the ground. Yes, some of the fundamentals are right, but the partners are not there. Our good friend, the Class Clown, is selling people properties, but the organization that they're working with is sending letters out to their clients, and within 12 months, there's going to be no management solution. Now, I do not want to buy property where there's no management solution in 12 months. And trust me, I do not want to help my investors buy property where there's no management solution in 12 months. So it's just non-negotiable. San Francisco is too expensive. It was one of the first markets to recover, and New Orleans is below the waterline. And certainly, it's not a market. I've been there. It's a fantastic city. I've been to Mardi Gras. We had a hell of a lot of fun. But the bottom line is it's not a place that I'd like to invest. So you can see when we show you areas, it's not a case of just wanting to invest in one specific area. Or it's not a case of we're just investing there because we believe we can get a better, X, Y, and Z. We've done the analysis. And the way that we work is that we find the markets where we've got the best partners, where we've got the best fundamentals, where we've got the best, full solution in terms of that end-to-end turnkey solution. And if it ticks those three boxes, and then there's a fourth criteria, would we be prepared to invest ourselves? Are we investing there ourselves? And if it ticks those boxes, then not only do we invest ourselves, but we help other people. And this is where I want Ryan to jump in with me in terms of what we are and what we're doing. I can see Douglas has asked who the Class Clown is. Douglas, I'm not in the game of bad-mouthing competitors, but join the dots in terms of who I'm talking about. So one of the areas that we invest in that I've liked right from the start was Orlando. I know when Brendan and I were there in April, and the economy has literally, the economy today versus the economy in April last year is like chalk and cheese in terms of the improvement. But the economy in Orlando is really, really strong. And the thing that we like it there, a lot of people think it's a tourist market. But interesting enough, Disney is the anchor. It employs Disney, Universal, and what's the other one? SeaWorld, employ over 100,000 people. And those 100,000 people, more than 50 million people come through the Orlando airport every single year. Now, interestingly enough, during the crash, that dropped to 49 million people. So they didn't feel the blip once. Since Disney World opened in the 1971, they've had more than 100,000 people through Disney World every single day. So a lot of people will tell you that in Orlando, there's been a big price drop. There was a price drop of over 70%, but it's also been one of the best performing markets. It's recovered by over 38% this year alone. There's been a 12% growth in terms of capital growth. But the place you've got to be careful about, you do not want to be investing in the single family homes, the $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 homes that the baby boomers bought as part of their retirement, because that market is devastated. And yes, you can get great discounts, but there's no renters, there's no income. So if you're looking to buy a holiday house, might be different, but we don't do that. We only do investment. So what we do is we focus on the actual properties. And what really works for us is these what they call condos. We would call them apartments, but very much they're in an estate like we used to. They've got the pool, they've got the clubhouse. We've got the full analogy for you in terms of the prices. This particular apartment is actually available. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. Our partners over there, they buy the property, they renovate the property, and then they provide a management and maintenance solution. You can see this property used to be $210,000. You can now buy it for $74,000. There's a small renovation, so the total capital one would need would be $76,400. The gross yield would be 13.35%. And then all the expenses actually come off. So you can see the taxes, the condo association fees, which are like our body corporate fees, the property insurance, and the property management. And you can see the net cash flow in terms of where you actually are. You can see the map here. So there's the center of Orlando. That's the airport. This is Disney World. That's Universal Studios there and SeaWorld. And interesting enough, this property's here. It's in the northern suburbs. It's like buying a property in Bryanston, the northern suburbs of Johannesburg. It's where the best schools are. And interesting enough, the main road is this I-4. So people that live and work here can get through easily to the city, to Disney World, and to the airport. And the type of people that we're attracting here are the kind of middle income people that are earning between $30,000 and $50,000 that can't afford to get a property, they can't get a mortgage, but they're good tenants, they're good renters, they stay there, for a decent amount of time, they've got solid jobs, and they're middle income people, and you can just see some pictures in terms of the property and the facilities there, and then some pictures of the inside of the property and the type of quality. So that's what you're getting in terms of Orlando. It's the one, the two, and the three-bedroom condos, as they call them. We would call them sectional title. Before I move on there, Ryan, is there anything that you would like to add in terms of Orlando and what you found when you were on the ground in Orlando?
Yes, basically my experience in Orlando is it's what South Africans are very familiar with in the sense that it is the condos, it's the swimming pools and the leisure centers. And correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, it was actually the most popular area that IPS invested in and on behalf of their clients last year because of that sense of familiarity.
Very much so, and not just the familiarity. It was where the economy had recovered the most. So, the economic fundamentals were sound along with the property fundamentals. Can I move on
Yeah,
now?
absolutely, absolutely. And I think I wanted to just point out something, Scott. Yeah, I just wanted to point something else, Scott, when you spoke about the areas that we invest in. I think a crucial thing that you forgot to mention is that we actually only invest in areas where we have partners who source the property and let the property out as well. So what most people do when they try and buy a property for themselves is they actually find a sourcing agent and then try to find a management agent on the back end to manage the property. And the huge risk, and what happens 9 times out of 10, and I've experienced this myself, is that you have someone source the property and tell you that you can rent it for $800, and then you get and you buy it and you think fantastic returns, but you take it to a letting agent who's a separate company, and they tell you can only rent it out for $600, and your returns nowhere near as much as you expected. And every single partner we deal with in every area both source the property and manage the property on an ongoing basis. So they're accountable and they're responsible for producing the types of returns that we promised them and that we're expecting on the initial assessment of the property.
I agree with you. And I think one of the important things there, Ryan, is that we're also not perfect. And it's a model that we learned with time. Because originally in Orlando, we actually met a guy that was, it wasn't under one roof. And we had problems with communication. And eventually Ray and Jeff brought everything under one roof so that we could resolve the communication problems. And I think that's one of the important things that we provide. If things don't work, we get our hands dirty and want to get stuff fixed. But, now we've got a philosophy, like Ryan just mentioned, we don't invest anywhere unless it's under one roof so that there's accountability right through the process. I got a question here from one of the people here, Brendan, and he said, "Are we guaranteed of tenants?" And the answer is no. Property is a sophisticated investment. We don't do any funny games or schemes where they come with rental guarantees and etc. etc. So the bottom line is these are in good areas, they're good properties, there's good rental demand, we've got good managers. And we've got the track record in terms of delivering. But no, there's no rental guarantee in terms of the actual opportunity and where it is that you're looking at. So, but what does happen quite often is that some of the properties are actually sold with a tenant. So, because the properties transfer so quickly there, they actually have a tenant in terms of the actual opportunity. So it does provide you with regards to, the some people actually have a property and they buy it with a tenant, which can reduce the risk in terms of where they actually are. Okay, is that enough on Orlando? You happy, Ryan?
Yeah, that's cool. And I think the key thing here is, guys, if you are interested in Orlando, then type in the question box provided in the GoToWebinar control panel. Orlando. So if you're curious about Orlando, we can actually show you more properties in relation to Orlando. To be honest with you, stock at the moment is quite scarce because one thing we do at IPS is I was going to refer to the class clown, but that's okay. I think we've put enough focus on that. But the one thing we don't do at IPS is compromise on returns. So if an area is facing issues around stock, we won't just show you 10 properties because we want to show you 10 properties. We'll stick to our baseline net returns, our baseline capital gains in certain areas. But the reality is in Orlando, it is becoming increasingly difficult to find good property. That being said, we are searching for property on an ongoing basis. So the important thing is that you express an interest. And so if you've got any interest around Orlando or you've got any questions around that particular area, please type the word Orlando in and we can have a chat with you about that.
Perfect. Okay, excellent. The next area that we do a lot of investment in, and certainly our clients really like it when they come on the buyer's trip, is Atlanta. And Atlanta is the fourth biggest city in America. It's a great place to go. It's got a great climate. It's beautiful. It's green. It's foresty. It reminds me a lot actually of the green forest that you get in Johannesburg during the summer. And the quality of houses there is really, really top. You're buying properties in the bedroom suburbs, so it's where middle income America wants to live in terms of a mom and pop and two kids. So we buy close to the good schools. We buy close to the good shopping centers. We buy close to the transport routes, etc., etc. And that's where our partners on the ground are so critical. With John on the ground there, John Chin and RJ and them, they're on the ground. They understand the market. And what South Africans don't understand, and this unfortunately is where the arrogance comes in, is that they think, they can just buy stuff on the internet. But it's so critical to know which side of the road to buy. If you buy on the left-hand side of the road, you might be in the wrong county and your kid can only go to a bad school. And therefore, no tenant's going to want to live there. No homeowner's going to want to live there. If you buy on the right-hand side of the road, your kid can go to a good school. So not only are you going to have good rental yields, but you're going to have good capital growth. And, again, as Ryan said, I mentioned too much of it, but my good friend, the class clown, is helping people invest in Clayton County, which the yields look so good on paper, but the bottom line is it's not real returns. It's not safe. And, RJ always says, at the end of the day, it's about safety. So we don't go for the cheapest properties. We go for the best properties. We go for the properties that are in the bedroom suburbs. We go for the properties where there's more owner-occupiers in the suburb than there are tenants. And for me, that's absolutely critical. And we don't have time tonight to go into it. But I think one of the things that's very, very important is what is happening so dramatically in terms of the market there. And I actually got this article through today. And it talks about the big funds, the guys like Blackstone and Colony Capital, and the fact that they've been actually, 10% of the purchases last year actually came from the funds. And this is what's happened. And we spoke about this at the extravaganza. And a lot of people thought that with regards to the valuations, and they go on the internet and they see different valuations. And it's a real challenge, And we actually had an interesting situation where one of our clients, she reserved a property and then she found a property just down the road, and we spoke to RJ, and RJ said, listen, this property is actually, under, I actually have it under offer. So the property that she was buying was $110,000, and there was one down the road for $85,000. And RJ said, it's a short sale. I actually have this property under offer, but you must understand the demand there. John Chin tells us they're doing absolutely everything to try and uncover the good opportunities because the big funds are just coming into the market and buying up everything. Anyway, I spoke to RJ 3 weeks ago. That property was a short sale, which means that it's back like a bank repossessed sale. It takes a long time to come through the system. And interesting enough, that exact property came to market. And RJ decided, because what happens in America is that you can have a lien, which is like a loan that stays against the title deed. And RJ had first option on the house, but he decided to pull out of it. And the reason being is that the lien, he couldn't fix the lien. The lien, it was going to cost too much money to the lien. And this person actually asked us a couple of months ago, they said, what would you be able to bring this property to me? And he said, well, I'd be able to bring it to you between 100 and 140. And the reason being is that he spends on average about $15,000 renovating the properties. And he hadn't been into this house yet. So, if he's buying it for 85, he wasn't sure exactly, what type of renovations he would need to do because they only rent the highest spec properties so that they get the best quality tenants, which gets you the best quality long-term because you've got no vacancies, etc., etc. And interestingly enough, RJ just told me about 3 weeks ago, that property went to auction and sold on auction for $130,000. Ladies and gentlemen, it sold on auction for $130,000 to one of those funds. It included the lien, so the debt on the title. It included no renovation, and it just highlighted for me the challenges that people have with regards to the valuations and what you're actually doing. So the reason that we like to invest in Atlanta, it's got a strong economy, it's got strong fundamentals, the affordability is really good in terms of, so there's good capital, there's good capital growth, there's good rental income yields, and the nice thing that we've got there is that we've actually got 3-year leases in place in terms of actually what we're doing. So just to show you some options here, and I can see there's loads of comments coming through, and I'm trying to keep up and also keep up with time. But okay,
Scott,
so
if you make me an organizer, I can field the questions while you're going through the talk. So
okay,
if you
no,
do that,
let's definitely do that.
I'll talk
So
about that.
let me
But
just
yeah, while you're doing that, I'll just mention the thing about the agreements. And one thing that we noticed that with Atlanta is that people are more owner-occupied, occupier mindset. And so the way that we structured the agreements, which is unique to the offer that we have with IPS, is that the tenants have an option to purchase the property. And the key thing that that actually does, perhaps one day they'll have the opportunity to actually rent that property. So if you've done any of this before, and I used to do dozens of these in the UK, is these rent-own types plans, you find that tenants look after those properties second to none. They're treated better than their own homes. And those of you who are in property will know that your biggest expense in property is a turnover between tenancy agreements. And so not only are these properties tenanted for 36 months, but in terms of owner occupier mindset and giving the tenants the option to purchase, they actually look after the properties, and they're close to brand new when you get them handed over again. So a massive saving from that side, and a big plus for Atlanta.
It's interesting, actually. John is online tonight. John Chin is online. He just said he was at the auctions last week. He said it was very competitive. He lost 8 houses to the competition, the funds at the last Atlanta auction. He walked away with 0 purchases. So, this is the type of demand, and, it's very difficult for people to understand what's happening in terms of it. But, I mean, here's a property, $90,000, built in 2002. All these pictures are pre-renovation, by the way. You can see here we've got all the costs, but a net yield of 8.5%. A really nice, solid American home. We've got all the videos, so you can take a video and go and look through it. We've also got the maps, the areas. We've got absolutely everything in terms of property. So that just gives you an example: a solid 8.5% net yield and a $90,000 purchase price. Then this one here is $123,000. Again, this is all pre-renovation, pre-landscaping. Anyone that's been with us to America would be able to know that. We've got a net yield of 7.8% and $123,000. It's in Covington, which is one of my favorite areas in Atlanta. Then this property here is $127,000. It's built in 2005, so generally all built in the last 10 to 15 years. You can see the size here, 2,228. Now, just in terms of replacement value, this property, it costs between $90 and $100 to replace that property. So that's without the land. So to rebuild this house would cost over $200,000. So yes, you would have been able to get this house cheaper a year ago, but can we still agree that there's great value if you're buying it at 127 when replacement value is 200,000? Yes or no? I'll tell you what. As John is online, I'm going to just let him be able to chip in if there's anything that he wants to. So let's just make him a presenter here. Okay, so John, you're now live, and we can hear you there in terms of what you're saying, in terms of anything that you've got. But this gives you an idea. I mean, this is a really nice quality American home, and it's the type of thing that when our investors come along, oh, what's just happened there? Hang on, I've taken myself off being presenter. I need to be presenter.
If you can hear me, Scott, it asked me if I was going to present,
Yeah,
and I
no,
think
no,
you actually switched it over.
I've got you. That's fine. I'll make myself a presenter again. I just wanted to hear your voice, not see you.
I have nothing to show.
What are you talking about? He's the best one, best looking one out of all of us. So.
John, it's great to have you online, and I look forward to seeing you next week. So, yeah, look, and I just thought, I know you're typing some stuff, so if there's anything you want to add of value, then I'd appreciate it. But I'm just trying to give people a feel in terms of, now, a lot of people ask us in Atlanta, is there financing? Unfortunately, it's not financing. The demand is so dramatic that we just don't have time to be able to get the financing in place, etc. So the positives of Atlanta is that we're getting great properties, great capital growth, and good net yields. The downside is that at the moment there's no financing available, and so one needs to buy them cash in terms of where you are. And then lastly, this is one of my favorite with the stone. It's a very good, it's a really nice house. You can see the forests. People absolutely fall in love with Atlanta when they come with us. And John and RJ, really have a wonderful system there in terms of the full turnkey. But you can see here, built in 1999, this property is an 8.2% net yield. And it just gives you an idea of the type of properties and what is available. And really for us, we're not estate agents. We don't try and sit, we've got X stock and try and sell it to you. We try and understand what it is you're looking to achieve, and then we provide you with the best solutions in terms of where you actually are. So, Ryan, have I forgotten anything with Atlanta? Is there anything else that I should be covering?
No, looks good. We've got a couple of people asking us about price ranges. So if you'd like to go back to just mention price range for Orlando, price range for Atlanta, and typical net yields and that sort of stuff, that'd be useful.
So I'd say in Orlando, the condos or apartments that we look at tend to be kind of between about $65,000 through to about $85,000, and net yields of probably between 8 and about 9.5%. In Atlanta, we're looking at single family homes, and again, there's very specific reasons. And if you want to talk to us on a one-to-one basis, and like Ryan said, if you're interested in Atlanta, put in Atlanta, and we can actually talk to you about it. For the purposes of a webinar, I mean, I could talk for 3 days about all the knowledge, and I'm sure Ryan and John could also. But I think the most important. Yep, sorry.
No, I was going to say, Scott, just to add one thing about Atlanta, I think this probably says more about the properties in Atlanta and the experience from the investor's perspective than anything else, is that more than half of our investors today are past investors that are buying more and or referring their friends and relatives to us. And I think that speaks volumes because at the end of the day, Atlanta, because we're in nicer areas, we're in owner-occupied communities versus renter-saturated areas, there's a little bit more growth potential with that we compromise a little bit on the yield, the paper yield, but at the end of the day, the experience the investors have there is very high. Between that and the fact that we have great property management on the ground and 3-year leases and the different type of tenants we attract, but the whole formula there creates a better experience. So yeah, on paper you may see a compromise of a point or two on yield. You do have a cash purchase, so you can't leverage. But when you're looking for a place to protect your wealth and hedge against the devaluation of the rand, it's a great market that you can kind of set it and forget it. And that's really the impression that we have of Atlanta and the investors have Atlanta right now.
Yeah, and look, I mean, at the end of the day, I always joke with the story of Brendan when Brendan bought a property there, and Linda was, it wasn't Linda, it was, I've just forgotten her name now, but was walking behind Brendan, and Bev was walking behind and actually said, this house is actually nicer than Brendan's house in South Africa. They really are quality houses, and people actually buy them, where they think, right, I could really live in these houses. They really, really are nice in terms of what it is. Peter Pennell has said, what is the capital growth can an investor expect? Interesting enough, Peter, for the last 12 months, it's been 16.6%. I personally wouldn't actually put that down in terms of returns. I like to be more conservative and say the 50-year average has been 9.75. But and in terms of my calculations, I see it getting back to within replacement value within a minimum of 5 years. So I work on my calculations of 9.75 year on year, which would actually bring us back to in line with replacement value. I think it'll probably happen quite a lot quicker than 5 years. But again, I'd rather be conservative and be wrong than be bullish and be right. In terms of be too bullish and not and the market doesn't happen as quickly as we said. Okay, so Atlanta for us is a great opportunity and always a favorite with regards to the buyer's trip and where we're going. And then one of the other markets is Memphis. Memphis for us has been an intriguing market. It's a distribution economy. It's also it's one of the, it's the biggest distribution economy in America. It's got FedEx, which has 30,000 employees. The FedEx airport is bigger than actually Cape Town airport, just to put it into perspective. It's got the Mississippi River, which is the biggest river in America. It's one of only a few cities that has all the major highways that go north, south, and east, west, and the major railways that go north, south, and east, west. So it's a very big distribution economy. It's got Nike. It's got Disney World. Any Disney World product anywhere in the world that you have, it gets made in China, it comes to Memphis, and then it gets distributed. And so, again, you're tending to deal with, it's also the home of Elvis, just for the record. And Beale Street, you can see there's a hell of a lot of good fun. And what's interesting in Memphis is that you've got the blue-collar workers that are working. It's actually a rental city. About 60% of people in Memphis rent. From a capital growth perspective, it hasn't had the highs and lows of somewhere like a Florida, and the long term over the last 30 years from a capital growth perspective have been 4%. So this is not so much a capital growth market. This is actually a rental income and yield market in terms of where you actually are. And one of the things that we like in Memphis as well is that we've got an excellent partner on the ground. Every time we go on a buyer's trip, they say that this is one of the strongest people, one of the strongest partners that they've got in terms of the full turnkey solution. And the great thing is that because our partners are so strong there's a private equity firm that's willing to lend against the properties. And they don't lend against you. It's non-resident, non-recourse financing. They lend up to 50%. And interestingly enough, they lend against the income which is projected on the property, because the management company is so sound. If you default on the loan, their attitude is that they can get paid out of the income from the property. And I found that incredibly important in terms of the market and what is happening in Memphis. So Memphis for me, if I just show you some of the opportunities, we've got different types of properties. We've got a C, a B, and an A. And sorry, I didn't answer the question with Atlanta. The price range with Atlanta is about $90,000 through to about $140,000, with net yields of about 8% through to about probably 9.5% in terms of where you're at. In terms of Memphis, you've got the A, B, and C type properties. The A are more exclusive in better areas. They'll have better growth but lower capital yields. The Bs are a mixture of the two in terms of capital growth and income, and the Cs will get higher yields and lower capital growth. From a price point, the Cs kind of go from about 50, 55 through to about 70. The Bs go from about 70 to about 90, and the A's go from about 90 to about 120. And the net yields in Memphis are probably from about 9% to say about 12, 13% at the top end. So you can see how this is a type B. They're older properties. They tend to be brick places, built in 1970. Again, full renovation, a 9.1% net yield. And you can see here it's a brick house. It hasn't been renovated yet. It doesn't come with the weeds in the roof, but it just gives you an idea. And then again, you've got all the pictures and the maps and the analysis and absolutely everything. We don't invest in 60% of Memphis. So our partner on the ground there, a gentleman by the name of Hewlett, he owns over 100 investment properties himself. His passive income per month just from his properties is $65,000. And the interesting thing for me is that his entire business was built out of necessity. He's an investor that needed a solution. So he knows where to invest because that's where he invests. That's where his properties are. And that's where he helps other investors invest. This one here is a cheaper property, a type C. It's $54,000. It's got a net yield of 10.5%. It'll invariably be a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom. And again, you can actually get 50% financing. So in this case, you would need about $30,000 or about 300,000 Rand to actually buy a type C property. And we've had a lot of people that have invested in type C properties because it's a good way to get into the market. You can get the financing. You can start to build your credit rating so that actually you can go through the market, more and more. Okay, so you should be able to see the picture there, and it gives you an idea. It's not a great picture. It had just come on the market. We're really, really struggling for stock in Memphis. There's so much demand. Interestingly enough, just like Atlanta was the best performing capital growth market over the last 12 months, Memphis, the Wall Street Journal, when we were there in May, an article came out in the Wall Street Journal that Memphis is the #1 market in America with regards to income yield and returns. And since that article 2 months ago, we've really struggled to find stock. And like Ryan said, we don't compromise. If we don't find good property, then we don't invest. So we've got the guys out there kicking doors down and trying to find us opportunities. But if you're interested in Atlanta, write in Atlanta and someone can speak to you about it. If you're interested in Memphis, let us know and someone can get hold of you and really speak to you about Memphis in terms of it. Okay, so anything else, Ryan, from your side in terms of Atlanta or Memphis that I've forgotten?
Yeah, just to add on that, I think the key thing that most people experience when they come on the buyer's trip is, let's be honest, this is the key mistake that most investors make before talking to us thoroughly and sitting down with us and having a consultation and doing all the things that we do to add value, is that Memphis are the types of properties that you might not live in, and always compare them to the green houses on the Monopoly board. They're not rock and roll. It's not a hotel. It's not Elof Street. It's not the big places, but they will collect rent for you every single day. And because this is such a rental mindset area, you can set and forget those, and it's a very, very high return on your income. The plus side and the downside of the fact that it's a low capital growth area is that when there is a downside in the market or an upside, you don't experience too much fluctuation on the capital. So these are properties that you want to look at if you're starting a portfolio and you're looking at a smaller budget, because we do have finance options for Memphis. And so if you are new to investing or you've got a smaller budget, then this will suit you. If you are a cash investor and you want to experience capital growth in the short to medium term, then you probably look at Atlanta and that sort of area. Now, we've had some people ask us, what do we mean by net yield? And just to clarify that, net yield is your profit, what's left over in your pocket every month pre-tax. So that's after all costs. So that's what's left behind. Every single property that we invest in the US has a significant profit left behind at the end of each month, which, quite frankly, is why I don't invest in South Africa, apart from many reasons. But the returns are much better. In the UK, you'll be doing well if you get half the net return. So if you get 4 to 5% net yield in the UK, then you're an astute investor. It's almost impossible to get good deals at the moment, let alone finance. So we have got finance options in Memphis only. We can talk to you about that. If you are curious about Memphis, type Memphis into the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll speak to you about that. If you're curious about Atlanta, then type in Atlanta. If you want to play the game properly, and this is what we thoroughly recommend, is you diversify. So typically what most investors do through IPS is they'll buy one in Orlando, one in Memphis, or one in Atlanta. We also have got several calculations and models around returns, finance, in ways that certain people have certain goals in their investing. My investment strategy is different to Scott's, is different to John's, is different to every other investor we've spoken to through IPS. And so it's critical that you actually talk to one of us so we can help you get clarity on your strategy and then guide you in what areas will meet those requirements as best as possible. For example, a common strategy is getting 2 properties in Memphis and 1 in Atlanta on finance, and then the profit on those properties on the rental side will pay off the finance options on Memphis within a 4-year period, and you own those properties free and clear. That's one example. We've got many models. So, if this kind of thing excites you, if you are serious about investing, I would strongly recommend you type in one of those areas. Maybe you don't know which area you'd like to invest in, then just type in consultation and we'll give you a buzz. We've been there, we've looked at the houses. Don't let the pictures put you off, because let's be honest, you're not going to move there. But I'll tell you what, when you start seeing the returns in your bank account and the rental income, particularly in Memphis, which is for me, very, very near the top, probably one of my favorites, if not the favorite area, but for income, then that's what it's about, So I invest in a lot of those types of properties, or have done in the past in the UK, and they still produce fantastic income for me on an ongoing basis.
And I think also, just to back Ryan up, there's a huge amount of questions coming through about tax and how the tax works and the structure and why certain areas over others. We're going to answer all the questions tonight. It's very difficult. We've got so much knowledge and so much stuff to share, but we're also conscious of the fact that it's that the time is running on. And I really want to share with you as much as possible. So we will answer questions, later, and we are going to run through tax. I really would applaud you to stay online, because I also want to show you how you can come to America for free and give you some really great options in terms of what we're doing. Because, while we've got John online as well, I wanted to share with you one of our new finds, which John has uncovered, which is Oklahoma. And this for me is one of the most exciting things. And the reason I say it's exciting is because we invest in people first and then property. So for those of you who are at the extravaganza, John was the overwhelming most popular person there in terms of his knowledge, in terms of the way he handled himself, in terms of his experience, in terms of all the fundamentals and the research he does. And I was absolutely intrigued, along with the rest of Brendan and Ryan and the rest of the IPS team. When we chatted to John about 2-3 weeks ago, he went and he's been researching this market for over 12 months. And he went there about 3 weeks ago, I think, if I'm right in saying. I'm not sure if John's still online, but John, are you there? Okay, we've lost John. But my point being is he went and researched this market, and he just came back and he was so excited. And he just said, Scott, I know you like those markets that you've been to in terms of Memphis and Orlando and Atlanta. He said, this is just like Atlanta, except you can actually get financing in terms of where you actually are. And he said the fundamentals. So I haven't personally been there, but we are going in the next 2 weeks. We're going to America. We're going to check out Oklahoma and just some of the stats and research. Now, if you know John well, there's so much information. And Andrew, I'm going to tell you how you can come on the trips with us as well tonight, because I would highly recommend it. But please stay online and I'll show you. Let me just finish Oklahoma and why John is so excited about this. And to be honest, if John's excited, I'm excited, because I believe in people and I like to work with partners that I trust. So Oklahoma, when he first told me he was in Oklahoma, I'll be honest with you, I couldn't have pointed to it on a map. So that's where it is there. It's right in the middle of the Midwest, just above Texas. And so that's where it is. Interestingly enough, the population growth is actually 60% above the national average. So Dr. Dolph DeRuis always talks about the importance of fundamentals and population growth, 60% higher than the national average. You don't need to be a rocket science to understand that the demand that will place on housing, both for capital growth and for rental yield. Interestingly enough, unemployment is one of the lowest in America. The current unemployment rate in America is 7.6%, and Oklahoma City is sitting at 4.8%, a very important fundamental with regards to demand. In terms of affordability, I love this graph. The most expensive properties are in the dark red. The least expensive are in the green. So you can see California and the West Coast here is very, very expensive. Phoenix, is all around this area, and New York's up here, and down Miami way down south. But we're looking Oklahoma right in the middle here, very affordable. Even Memphis and Atlanta is also one of the more affordable areas. In terms of affordability, Oklahoma City is one of the most affordable cities in the whole of America. Now, interestingly enough, we buy everything in South Africa based on a price. So if I buy a car, it's 300,000 Rand, and that's what I buy it for. The Americans don't buy it like that. They advertise it as 3,000 Rand a month. They buy everything on the amount of money it costs per month. Now, if that's the case, if it's one of the most affordable markets, so the price of property is low and the incomes are high, can we agree that it's got the best potential for capital growth? Because when the people can afford to pay more, it's common sense, and because they pay everything based on the amount, the installment, it's got more room for growth later down the line, which for me is very, very important. In terms of cities that were affected by the GFC, the global financial crisis, you can actually see that all these California cities, Phoenix, Vegas, New York, and some of the areas around Washington, and then down here in terms of Florida, this is where the dark blue is where people were actually underwater. So that means basically that their mortgage was higher than the value of their property. But look at Oklahoma. Fine. Less than 4%. Memphis, Atlanta, very similar in terms of the GFC. Forbes came out in the middle of the Great Recession in America and said that Oklahoma was the #1 city to invest in from a recession-proof perspective. And the reason being is that it's got oil. And so really it's really attractive. This is the GDP growth. So the number one place in America is North Dakota. Now, you heard me talk earlier about the fact that we're on our way to North Dakota. We do the research, ladies and gentlemen. We don't do this on gut feel. But look at the Greens. The Greens are the next best in terms of GDP growth. And there is Oklahoma. And the interesting reason between North Dakota and Oklahoma is because they got oil. And so that's where it's growing. Interesting enough, you've got some of the good areas in terms of down here as well, in terms of what you're looking for. And then lastly, in terms of cost of living, you can see here again, Oklahoma is one of the most affordable places. So is Memphis, Tennessee. So is Georgia, which is Atlanta. So these are the reasons that we've been looking at these different markets. Now, where do you actually invest in Atlanta? And John, if you do come online, just shout. I'm not sure if he's there. Ryan, I'm not sure if you can see if John's online, but am I on my own?
No, I'll have a look. John's on mute, so he's probably just muted himself.
Okay, no worries. So I haven't been to Oklahoma, and again, we'll have a much better perspective after we've been there.
Sorry, guys, were you? I'm sorry, guys, were you waiting on me?
Dude, we're talking about your latest find in America, and we were asking you to chip in if there was anything we were missing in terms of Oklahoma. So I'm just running through the research and the slides, and if you've got anything to add, please, in terms of what your experience was in Oklahoma, because you know more about the American market than anyone else I know. And so when you tell me that Oklahoma is a city I need to look at, then it's certainly got my attention.
No, thank you. Oklahoma City is probably the city that I'm most excited about of everything that we're doing right now, because two main reasons. Number one, it's in front of, politically speaking, the three biggest employers in Oklahoma City are oil companies that are playing in the Eagle Ford region and Bakken, North Dakota. And if there's one thing that you cannot argue about with the United States, is the U.S. kind of likes to take what it wants. So if you kind of surrender to that fact, and you know that American imperialism, from agricultural imperialism to economic imperialism to their military imperialism, all of it's fueled by oil. And so when oil prices go up, which I don't think anybody can, if anybody's been following oil, you can't really argue with the fact that cheap oil is behind us, that when oil prices go up, these towns do really well. And Oklahoma City in 2008, at the peak of our financial crisis, was voted by Forbes magazine the #1 most recession-proof city in the United States. So fundamentally, it is the most sound market. And then when I went into that market, I was afraid that the prices were going to be too outrageous, because I thought it maybe would follow a similar track that Austin was on, with one of the highest GDP, higher income growth cities in the country, because it's a very similar market to like an Austin and a Dallas. That I was pleasantly surprised to find that the institutions weren't there, and that meant that the prices weren't out of reach compared to a place like Austin or Dallas. And so when you look at affordability, not from a perspective of how much house can I get per square foot, that's called absolute affordability, but if you look at affordability from the standpoint of what does this house cost compared to what people can afford locally, the local median incomes, it's one of the most affordable markets in the country, which means that as an investor, you can expect growth and a concrete floor. So we call that concrete floors and blue skies as far as the prices go. So it's a very safe market to have your money in. It's personally where I'm going to be putting my capital and doing projects going forward. And we're playing only in the higher income areas. It's the only market I've ever been able to play in where we can get very high yields. And when I say high, I mean that probably around the 8 to 9% range, that you can still play in the best school districts and the higher income areas of the city. And that's specifically where we're going to be focusing.
And
so, again,
sure.
the two reasons I like...
Sorry, John?
Oh, no, I was just to wrap it up, the two reasons I really like it, from a macro perspective, a strategic play, is that because it's in front of oil and because it is in front of the institutional money.
And I mean, look, you've actually got a heat map here that you gave me. So the dark yellow is the most expensive. So you can see the north and the western side of the city here is like the northern suburbs of Joburg, or the southern suburbs of Cape Town, or the Umhlanga area of Durban. They're the better areas. And interestingly enough, in terms of where John is recommending we invest, is Edmond, Piedmont, Yukon, and Mustang. And at the moment, John has been able to secure us. It's so difficult to get good stock, he's only been able to secure us 3 opportunities, but these 3 opportunities are actually in Piedmont, which is the second best schooling. Edmond is the most expensive area. Piedmont is a nice balance. It's the second best schooling area. It's 15 minutes from the CBD. It's right in the good schooling areas, etc., and it's really interesting. So this is the area of Piedmont in terms of the area. And a lot of people are asking about financing. Yes, we have financing available here. It's 50% loan to value at 8.2%. So, as you said, the net yields are 8, at 8.5%, 9%, and you've got financing at 8.2%. So it's very attractive. Anything that I need to share with people about Piedmont that you would like to share, John?
The most important thing is buying in front of progress, buying where people are moving to. And Oklahoma City boasts a population growth trend, according to the Census Bureau, that's 60% higher than the national average. So when you have high incomes and you have high population growth, then you have that tilted supply-demand issue that's going to raise the prices there. So before the funds even come into this picture, which they're starting to creep into this market, which kind of scares me a little bit. I don't like that. But you can't stop them. But even without them impacting the market on those prices, the price is going to go up by virtue of the high incomes and the population growth. Everybody is moving to that area. So if you see that road that kind of curves around from the top of Mustang all the way up to Piedmont, all the way over to Edmond, that corridor right around A, that is where all the growth is in Oklahoma City. It's all going north and northwest. So that's where we're playing. Once they put that turnpike in there, that road, now all of a sudden you have retail centers, shops popping up. You have a lot of residential houses. So the rooftops are coming in. The retail centers are up. Vacancy rates are extremely low at only like 2%. And then, some people, they follow the tornadoes there, and they get scared by these tornadoes, but these tornadoes are so isolated that they didn't even raise the insurance rates. Insurance companies don't care about tornadoes because they're so isolated and they're so narrow. It's hurricanes that raise insurance rates. That's why the coast of Florida is so expensive and unreasonable for landlords. But the insurance agent, State Farm, is cutting checks 2 to 3 weeks after for total losses. So that's not even a concern that we have. But for the reasons that most people don't like Oklahoma or haven't been following it, because it's kind of a sleeper or an emerging undiscovered market, is exactly why I'm so excited about it.
And just to show you, I think pictures speak 1,000 words. This is just some examples of the type of properties that John took pictures. This was with his iPhone. And I do repeat, there's only 3 properties here. One of them's already tenanted, and John has actually had to put his personal money down to secure these properties. That's the level of demand there. So if you are interested in Oklahoma, these won't be available by the time we go on the buyer's trip. They're just moving too quickly, but they are available. John has exclusively made them available to our IPS investors. Just three opportunities, and one's already got a tenant. And as you can see, generally tend to be brick houses. They remind me a lot of Australia and Brisbane in terms of the type of properties you can see here. And we've got the floor plans. They're new construction, so you can see the master suite, bedroom 3, 2, the living area, the open plan area, and the double garage. So we've got all the details on each property, and the price points tend to be between about $130,000 and $140,000. So again, with 50% financing, you would need about $70,000. You can see this is a really nice 4-bedroom home, brick 4-bedroom home, and I'm not sure if this video is going to work. It doesn't buffer very well on a webinar, but it gives you a feel for the suburbs. You've got these awesome suburbs in terms of just the look and feel, brick houses, new construction, and I know that it's not really coming through. I can see on my screen. I'm not sure if anyone else is actually seeing the video. If you could just give me some feedback if that actually came through. But really, really quality properties. And as John said, in the good schooling areas, good districts. So you get a really good feel for the neighborhoods. And that's why he's so excited, because the look and feel is really good. And you can see we've got the floor plans here. So the master suite, the open plan kitchen, living area, the second, third, and fourth bedroom, and then the double garage in terms of where you're looking at. So new construction. The nice thing with new construction is that the maintenance is obviously much lower. You've got builder warranties in place, etc. So and one of them actually already has a tenant in place, which is fantastic. So it really reduces the risk. So if you're interested in Oklahoma City, then please put in Oklahoma, and we would need to get back to you fairly urgently, because we want our investors to be able to take advantage of this opportunity and not lose out on the properties that John has managed to secure for us. I'm not going to show you this video I can send it to you if you're interested. It doesn't buffer well enough in terms of a webinar, but it just shows the quality of the finishes. And then you can just see an example of the type of properties. We've got all the details in terms of the actual 3 properties that are available. We've got spreadsheets, we've got numbers in terms of where you are. But it's very much, anyone that's been to Brisbane, Australia, it's very much that feel, brick houses. It's what we used to as South Africans. And you know, as John said, I think the most important thing is that, you know, the vacancies are low. They've got a management company there. They're a massive company. They've got over 3,100 properties under management, you know, all over, you can see all the different areas that they're actually in. They're targeting new areas, and most importantly, in terms of where they are, is that they actually have 350 properties under management in Oklahoma City, and they've actually got a vacancy of less than 2%. So just some of the 10 top points, or 9 top points, is that the unemployment is below 5%, the vacancies are less than 2%, the population growth is 60% higher than the national average. The GDP growth is one of the strongest in America. It's a landlord-friendly place, so it takes 3 weeks to evict a tenant if they're not paying. It's Class A locations in front of local progress, 15 minutes from the CBD, major highways, great schools. It's got awesome demographics, and it's 90% owner-occupied neighborhoods. The developer and the house builder, when they build, they're only allowed to sell 10% to investors, and that's why it's so difficult to get access to stock. They're new construction with builder's warranties, so brick, and as I said, priced kind of between 130 and 140. There is international financing, non-recourse, non-resident, which is 50% loan to value at 8.25%. And then the rent ratio tends to be about 1%, which means you're getting net yields of about 8 to 9%. So anyone that's interested in Oklahoma, I would highly recommend, you know, putting in Oklahoma and chatting to one of us. And if you want to, you know, John can also, you know, stay online and answer some questions. But Oklahoma is certainly something that's really exciting me, and I really can't wait to go with John, you know, in the next 2 weeks to go over and check it out. Because I will give you some credit, John, and I know you're online, but you know, whenever you've told me something's been good to date, it has been. So I'm sure that we're going to be overwhelmed in terms of what we actually find on the ground. But for some of you that the early adopters out there, there are 3 properties that John has personally secured. He's personally put his own money down, which I think is a huge, what's the word called, you know, accolade in terms of the type of property in the area and the location and the sun and everything else. So, and one of them actually has a tenant. So if you are interested and really want to pull the trigger, let us know, because we want to make sure that one of our clients is taking advantage. This is a fairly complicated diagram. A lot of people think that investing in property is just about buying the property. Our good old friend, the class clown, as I mentioned to you, just sells people properties in their own name. And for me, sorry, just before I go into this, is there anything, Ryan or John, that I forgot with regards to Oklahoma that I need to mention before I go into the structure, the tax, and banking and the important things?
Yeah, I'd like to add something. Am I correct in saying that we are, and definitely in terms of South Africa, exclusively investing in that area at the moment?
Yes.
Yeah, nobody else is in Oklahoma City, in South Africa, and frankly, Oklahoma City isn't even on the map with a lot of places, but that's going to change in about 6 months.
Yeah. So basically, you know, you're getting in on a pre-mainstream investment opportunity right now if you get involved in now. So, you know, just give us some perspective there, you know, John or Scott, in terms of people who invested Atlanta pre-mainstream and where the prices had gone in that short period of time. I think just to create perspective, because it's easy to look at the prices now, but we all know that it's the early adopters that absolutely make a fortune. So I don't know if you guys want to make a comment around that.
Yeah, you know, if I could, Scott, without taking up a lot of time, because I know we're running down here, but if there is one insider advantage you can secure as an investor in the United States, it's knowing how to react when it comes to where this big money is moving. So these, quote, Walmarts of real estate that are coming in, that are pushing out us mom and pop investors, are absolutely the market makers. And when you look at the Case-Shiller Index and the national stats when it comes to home prices, nothing moves those home prices that needle more than what these institutions are doing. And I'll give you a perfect example. Scott mentioned earlier that I was at the auctions in Atlanta, which is one of the 6 ways that we buy houses out there. And I had 8 properties that I was watching for. My max bid price was the local comparables minus the rehab costs. And so I had prices on there between 90,000, 100,000, 110, another one at 88. So I was watching these 8 properties, and when I get to the auction, I'm trying to get a feel for every single month that we do these, how many institution players are there. And so each one of these institutions will dump anywhere from 3 to 4 of their staff to just bid on properties. They probably pay them $10 an hour, maybe $100 bonus if they get the property. And these, there was probably about 7 groups represented. So I knew right off the bat that there was going to be stiff competition, because here's the distinction. If you get nothing else as far as your understanding what these institutions do, this is most important, that they are yield driven, meaning they do not care what the comparable sales are doing in a neighborhood. So if you buy a 1,200 square foot house and 5 1,200 square foot houses in that neighborhood sold for about $100,000, and you're yielding about an 8% rate on that house, an institution who is driven by a 6% yield return can pay about $135 for that same exact house without even their renovation costs factored in. So that's what I was competing with. I lost on all 8 of those properties by at least $40,000 to $60,000 per property. One of the properties I stopped at $110,000. These 3 institutions came in just battling for it, and they ran it all the way up to $188,000 before renovation costs. And I snuck a picture, interestingly enough, and I'm going to do a video on this because I thought it was fascinating. It just validated everything that we've been preaching. I snuck a picture over the shoulder of one of the representatives for these institutions and took a shot of her sheet. On the far right column, it showed the yield that they were after, which was 5.6, 5.7, 5.7, 5.8, all the way down the sheet. They are buying based on that cap rate. If you think of a $150,000 property, you can do the math. A $150,000 property that nets a 6%, or I'm sorry, an 8% cap rate that you and I might go after, that's $12,000 of income at the end of the year. So take that $12,000 income and divide it by 6%, and now you have a $200,000 price. So what you and I would pay $150,000 for 8% return, they would pay $200,000 for, because that same income is a 6% return. When you understand that, then you know the significance of getting in front of these funds before they get to a specific market, and they're just starting to get into Oklahoma City. I'm already competing with them in Atlanta. I competed with them in Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Orlando already, and I'm seeing this pattern over and over and over, because in the first time in U.S. history, these Walmarts of real estate are now securitizing and pooling rents to sell on Wall Street and or to hold themselves. And it's a fascinating thing, and if you know how to play it, then you have an inside advantage for absolute consistent cash flows and growth potential that we've never had before.
And I mean, just to back you up, John, when I was there with John in August, we ended up buying 18 properties that day on the auction. So, I mean, just showing you how quickly it's changed from August last year. I know that I'm very conscious of time, ladies and gentlemen. There are a lot of people. I'm going to tell you about our buyer's trip. I just want to run through quickly about the structure. The bottom line is that when you buy a property, there's 3 steps to the property. You've got to buy the property, and actually John said this when he was out here at the extravaganza. You've got to do the management and maintenance, which is the second step, and then you've got to do the tax, the structuring, the compliance, the banking, and everything else. And unfortunately, most people forget about steps 2 and 3. So we actually, in terms of the process, we help you find the property, we understand what it is you're looking for, and ultimately we help you close on the property. We then also help you set up a structure. We set it up in an LLC. It stands for Limited Liability Company. It's the best way to own property in America. It's the safest way. It protects you from a liability perspective. It allows you to build a credit rating in America, which will allow you to get traditional bank financing later down the line. But the most important thing is that it's also tax efficient. We personally have spent 140,000 Rand with Grant Thornton finding out what the best structure is. Grant Thornton is one of the biggest accounting firms in America and in South Africa. And that's the level of professionalism that we go to make sure that we're making the right decisions on behalf of ourselves and our investors. And I think that's the difference as well. You know, we're not just salesmen, we're all investors ourselves. And so we're helping ourselves in the process, we help others. And then, you know, it's the whole banking where we help people set up the bank account. And then we've got the accountant to do the tax. So everything is covered. It's a full end-to-end solution in terms of the management. You can see here the management and maintenance. That comes through into your bank account. And then ultimately your accountant is doing your tax. this really is a lot of detail that you've got to go into here. But I think the most important thing is that we've got the solution, the full solution end to end, to help you find a property, renovate the property, manage the property, maintain the property, then do the tax, the structuring, the bank account, and ultimately make sure that you're on top of everything on an ongoing basis. So is there anything that I've forgotten, Ryan, in terms of the structure? I'm just conscious of time, but is there anything in terms of this detail?
Yeah, look, guys, stay online. I know we're running over a little bit. This is critical stuff, and to be fair, it's time-sensitive stuff, which is why we're doing a thorough update on this. So thanks for your patience. The key thing here, Scott, to point out is that no one else is offering this service, never mind this level of service and to the detail that we're offering it in South Africa, and there's no ways you can go out and do it on your own. A lot of people go up and set up LLCs in different states. Delaware is one that comes up quite a lot, and they don't realize that that LLC has significant trading limitations on it, which means you can't actually purchase property in the US. So I love what you said there, Scott, about this guy saying that you're destined to fail if you do it on your own, because these are things that we've been ironing out over the last 14 months and continue to do as the markets and the rules change, because they do, but we're on top of it. So sometimes we do incur the odd problem, and we're very transparent around that, and we do communicate that to people, but the odd problem that we experience is nothing like compared to what I know South African investors have been burnt by in trying to evict tenants because the law doesn't favor them here in this country. You just won't get the level of service. And John, I don't know if it's still the case, but you only invest or you only work with 4 international partners, and we're one of them because of the level of service we offer people and because our systems are set up so efficiently that it's actually quite easy for you to deal with us, both from a purchase perspective but an ongoing perspective. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, that's pretty much right. I'm getting old, man, and starting to realize I'd rather work smart, not hard.
If you're becoming an old man, then I've got no hope, dude.
I'd prefer to work with educated investors that have the right structures, the proper expectations, that are educated. I've done too much of the other, and it doesn't work for anybody.
Yeah, 100%.
There's a lot of questions coming through in terms of the tax and the structure and the costs and the time and everything. Please, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's important to talk to one of our investment consultants. They can take you through the process. But the long story short, it takes us about a week to set up the LLC and get it all in place. And it's absolutely critical that you've got it in place so that we can get your bank account set up. And I think, as Ryan always says, if nothing else, get your LLC set up, because you've then got a company overseas, you've got an international bank account. And I always joke with people, if nothing else, you don't buy a property, but you can still buy stuff on iTunes. So, it's very, very important to get that LLC going as quickly as possible. Have your horse in the race, because the sooner you got your horse in the race, the sooner you can start to build a credit rating. The sooner you can start to build a credit rating, the sooner you can get access to, if you're an American citizen, you can get financing at 4.5%, 5% fixed for 30 years. Okay, we're talking net yields of 8 to 13%, and you can get financing at 5% fixed for 30 years. So it just gives you an idea of how important it is and why I think it's completely irresponsible for some of our competitors to be helping people invest in their own name in terms of where they are. So just in terms of competing, you've had a lot of information tonight, and we do apologize. Albert Einstein says doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, is the definition of insanity. I always joke about my good friend and investor from Pretoria, who's a billionaire, and said to me, even turkeys can fly in a hurricane. It's really easy when the market's going up to make money, but it's actually how do you do it? And so, in our opinion, you've got 3 choices. You can do nothing, and we've seen from experience that people came to events a year ago in May at the breakfast and did nothing, and really the regret that sits in, because you see the market turning. We've unfortunately got the partners like John and like James, the guy that tells us about the rand. We had one lady put 4 million rand in an account in March at the extravaganza and then get cold feet and pull out. I mean, she's lost over 500,000 rand just on currency. That's what happens with people that don't do anything. And, we've got this simple graph, but our purchasing power is diminishing with the rand, and the costs are going up. And the challenge is that our freedom is being challenged. And why I say freedom, it's, if your kid wants to go to an international university, you want to go on a skiing holiday, you might want to immigrate one day. At the end of the day, your net worth is determined in a first world currency. I don't care how many rands you've got, because that will determine the freedom. It will determine the freedom of your choices. And for those of you that were at the breakfast or one of the last webinars, and I'm not going to go into this in detail, but if you leave your money in the bank in South Africa over 30 years, in 30 years' time, you'll have $200,000 net asset value. If you buy a South African property at an 8% net yield with 12% capital growth, you'll have $700,000 worth of net asset value. If you buy an American property in a year's time, you will have about $2.2 million worth of net asset value. If you take action today, you'll have $2.4 million because you've got the benefits of compound growth. And if you take action with financing, you'll have over $4 million because you get the leverage effect. You'll be 16 times wealthier if you take action and actually invest overseas. And you'll be 4 times wealthier. The difference between investing in a great property in South Africa and a great property in America. And this is the pain of not taking action. This is what it means to you in terms of your freedom. And I always say this is what it is to me in terms of my family. And if I don't take this action, if I don't make this commitment, then I won't have the freedom later in my life to make the decisions that I want. The second option you've got is to do it yourself. So jump on an airplane, fly over to America, believe that you're going to be able to suddenly understand the market. You're going to know which city to go to. Then when you get to that city, you're going to know which suburb to go to. You're going to know how to buy American property because it's completely different to South African properties. You're going to not have an American bank account. You're not going to have an American cell phone. And interesting enough, Brendan and I went over. We have an American bank account. We have an American cell phone. We had $1 million in our bank account. We tried to buy 20 properties, and we told them we were coming to Atlanta in a week. And guess how many people got back to us? Naught, zero, zilch, nothing, nobody. And we said to John Chin, we said, dude, we got $1 million. Surely the estate agent want to get back to us. And he just joked with us. And I don't know if you can remember, John, what you said, but you said, everyone's got $1 million. And that's just the start, ladies and gentlemen. I say to people, go and live in Atlanta for 6 months. Seriously, Brendan and I, with all our experience, we couldn't buy. No one got back to us. We just validated so intensely our belief in our partners and the value that they're bringing in terms of the properties they're bringing. And then if you found a property, you've still got to find someone to renovate it. How are you going to do that? You've got someone on the ground like RJ and Hewlett and them that is literally micromanaging those guys to have really quality finishes. How are you going to do that long distance? And then management, maintenance, tax, structuring, and ongoing. It's just a nightmare. And I've been doing this now. I bought my first international property in '99. So I've personally been doing this 14 years. Whether it's me or George Ross, who's Donald Trump's right-hand man, we have the experience. We know that you will fail. It's why more than 80% of people that invest overseas lose money. And I can guarantee you up front, you might tell me, oh yeah, but I can find a property at a better price. Let's talk in a year or two and we can actually see, where the returns are. So for me, the third option is working with us. We've helped over 2,000 people invest internationally to a value of over 1.6 billion. We're the only company in South Africa that focuses purely on international investment. We've got offices in South Africa, Australia, the UK, and the USA in terms of a global platform. We spend millions on research. Before we got America started, we went over there a number of times. We've now spent over 1.5 million of our personal money flying over to America and finding out, like we showed you all the markets. We've got best of breed partners like John and his teams over there. We've got an IT platform to back it up. We've got an experienced after sales division like Ryan has taken you through. We've got access like Oklahoma to off-market opportunities. They're not available anywhere else. No one else even knows about it. But we've got the top quality people on the ground to uncover these opportunities. And then lastly, we're a member of ARPP, which is the Association of International Property Professionals. We were awarded the best company in Africa in 2009. We were the first South African company to ever be invited onto the panel. It's like the Estate Agents Affairs Board, but it's run out of London a little bit more efficiently. And I'm also qualified as a CRS, which is Certified Residential Specialist, which is the highest qualification one can get in America in terms of, that's actually global in terms of property. So the benefits of investing of us is that we already have invested the time. We've been there, we've traveled there, we've established the local partners. We've done all the research. With our over 2,000 international investments, we know how to find the right partners. We know how to choose the right areas. The most important thing that Ryan said earlier is that we offer a turnkey solution. So we help buy the property, we help renovate the property, we help manage and maintain the property. We help with the tax, the structuring, the asset protection, and the compliance. No one else offers this. Everyone else are a bunch of estate agents selling houses. We are a professional company providing a private banking service that provides everything that encompasses buying property. Brendan and I spent 80,000 Rand actually flying over to go on Dr. Dolf de Roos's event. It was held by Dr. Dolf de Roos and Neil Peterson from Real Estate Investor magazine. It was a wonderful trip. We went to Vegas, we went to Phoenix, we went to go and understand those markets. Dolf was telling us about how wonderful those markets were. We went there and we understood the fundamentals. So we've checked out these markets with the top people. We spent 140,000 Rand, as I told you, hiring the #1 accounting firm in the world, Grant Thornton, to understand the tax, the structuring, and the compliance. And we spent over 1.5 million Rand personally traveling to all the different cities, 17 different cities in terms of where we are. So the question is how to invest with us. And option 1 is the on-site investor. You actually come on the buyer's trip to America. Option 2 is you're a remote investor. You give us a mandate. So you basically sit at home, you tell us what you want, and we help you find it when we're on the ground. And option 3 is that Brendan, my partner, is really, really clued up in terms of IT, and he's going to stream the whole trip. So you can actually be there, you can watch it, you can experience it, and you can watch us invest in America. So let's just look at the spectator option, and you can see my little thing here with regards to the Google glasses. But the bottom line is Brendan's going to be streaming as much as the internet will allow us to do it. And you can watch it, everything we do in America, from home, as long as you've got an internet connection. We do need to charge a fee there of 2,000 Rand. The reason being is that it's hugely expensive from a data perspective. We can't afford to have that many people online, so there is going to be a charge. But the bottom line is you get a unique opportunity. We are testing it in terms of the technology, but it'll be fantastic because you get to feel what's happening on the ground. And it's like a spectator. You sit in the crowd and you watch the rugby game. You're not necessarily involved in it, but you spectate and you get to see what we're doing. Then you've got the remote investor. Now, what the remote investor is, they're a mandate. They tell us exactly what they're looking for. And they actually go out, they fill in a purchase management form, so we know exactly what they're looking for. And then when Brendan and I are there, we are your ears and eyes on the ground. We trust our partners on the ground, but we just add that extra level of due diligence. And then when we're there, we're on the telephone, Brendan's taking videos, he's uploading them, emailing them back to the client, talking to the client, and giving the client virtually the same experience as if they were there, but we are their ears and eyes on the ground. They need to set up the LLC and the tax structure, which costs 18,000 Rand. We make no money out of that. That's purely a hard cost to the lawyers and the accountants. There's a purchase deposit. We get people to put that in a trust account up front. They have to do it because these properties move so quickly that we need that money. It's in our Standard Bank trust account, but at least with the Americans, we can show them, we can say, there, sir, this guy is committed, so that when you give us the go-ahead, that property is reserved for you and you don't actually lose it. We had a problem in Atlanta back in October last year where we reserved a whole lot of properties and 2 days later we had lost all of them. So we had to come up with a system. And then we've got a purchase management fee, which is our private banking fee, where we actually help you right through the process. We are your single point of responsibility. You basically need to decide, do you want to deal with Investec Bank or do you want to deal with a teller at Standard Bank? If you want to deal with Investec Bank, that is who we are. That is what we provide. We are not the cheapest, but we are certainly the most professional private banking service with regards to property. And that's why I say that we are your ears and eyes on the ground. And actually about 70% of our investors take that option. So Brendan and I fly over, and Ryan's been with me, and Yaku and Teresa and Relene, everyone's been over, and we go and check out the opportunities and we help people invest. And then the last one is what we call the on-site investor. This is the one that excites me. People come with us. They literally come on the trip. It's the exact same costs in terms of the LLC and the purchase deposit and the purchase management. You need to get this set up before, because when you get to America, we've got your LLC set up. You can open all your bank accounts in your own name, and it's really an effortless process. And the beauty with coming with us is that you achieve 4 things. You get the right information. So you deal with our partners. We give you all the right information. In terms of our partners on the ground, you get to meet them. We're completely transparent. We've got nothing to hide. One of the guys, a guy by the name of Sean that came in May, he said, everyone's skeptical. They're trying to understand where the catch is. The beauty with us is there is no catch. We wouldn't be able to do a buyer's trip if the properties weren't great or if the partners weren't great. And Sean sat down with me in the pub one night and he said to me, Scott, I really can't understand. If this is a scam, it's so well organized. And I said, dude, it's not a scam. It can't be a scam. We're not that clever. And he said, I completely understand it. And he loved meeting the partners and getting the right information, and actually invested in 3 properties himself when he came on the buyer's trip. So the third thing is that you get to take action. You get to see physical properties that are available now that you can actually get involved in terms of the properties and how it actually goes. And then lastly, can someone just switch off that phone, please? Lastly, in terms of fun, I certainly love to have fun. I know Brendan and Ryan and Yaku and everyone else in the team, Teresa and Raleen, all love to have fun. So we have a lot of fun on the buyer's trip. You can't go to America and not have fun in the process. So for those of you who are interested, it's the 18th of July to the 30th of July. We don't have a lot of time. It's 2 weeks away, but we can get our visas through. We've got a very efficient travel agent that can get the visas through. So, time is everything. Taking action is everything. If you want to jump on the trip, come with us. And literally, it's the 18th. And then the next one is later on in the year. The last one for the year is at the end of October, if you can't make this original one. So if you are interested, Chuck, put in there, you want more information, we can send you the brochure to show you some pictures. This was us in February in New York. You can see some of the pictures. Michael is actually online tonight. And I know Michael was very concerned and, actually wasn't that sure and didn't want to pay the $20,000 up front because he wasn't sure if he trusted us. And then he came and he met the partners and he met the guys on the ground and, was very comfortable and actually invested in a number of properties when he was there. Stuart and Bev, who I know they're also online tonight, they went as far in terms of, being concerned. They actually did a credit check on me. Now, I'd ask you not to do that because it affects my credit rating. But again, they came, they experienced, they got the information, they met the partners, and they also invested in a couple of properties, So it just gives you the idea in terms of the personal stories of the people that come. This was us actually in May in Times Square. So again, having some fun. And every single person here ended up buying properties. In fact, over 10 properties, more than 2 properties per person. And so they came, they experienced, and they invested. This is us with Dr. Dolph DeRoos on Neil Peterson's event. When they went and we went over, and this was actually at the auction, so it's what John Chin was talking about. And funny enough, they were filming Property Wars at the time, so it's all these big institutions buying on the auctions. This is us having some fun with Marius, another investor of ours, and going into the Grand Canyon in a helicopter, and going having some drinks on the bottom of the river in the Grand Canyon, going to a show with Dr. Dolph DeRoos, which was spectacular. And then, these are the properties in Atlanta. This is the bus that we jump in. This was the gang in October. And this is actually Marius's property that he bought in Atlanta. And then this was in Covington. This is Michael's property. This was the February trip. And you can see the team and having lots of fun. And there's Ryan, for those of you who don't know what he looks like. We call him Wool Scarpy because his hair looks like a woolly sheep. And then this is Orlando. And going in and around the apartment, seeing, so you're touching, you're feeling, you're kicking, you really are getting the wonderful experience inside. This is us at the bank, so opening all the bank accounts, getting your personal account set up, your business account, your LLC account. So we help you, we streamline, and we make sure that everything's done. This is us meeting RJ, full briefing, so before you go out on the bus, you know exactly which city, where to invest, why they invest in those areas. So taking everything you learned tonight and going at a much deeper level. And then in every area, we organize a dinner. So you meet the accountant, the lawyer, the management agent, the inspection agent. We believe that you've got to meet the entire team. It's absolutely critical to meet the entire team. And in terms of where you actually are. And this was another one of the dinners. This is us having fun on Beale Street. I would highly recommend coming to Memphis, if nothing else, just to have fun. There's about 30 or 40 live bands every night, and it's a real joy in terms of where we are. And then this was actually my birthday. Unfortunately, we no longer go here because this guy got fired. RJ is very much a micromanager and wants to make sure. But I mean, I spent my birthday there and it was absolutely wonderful. And what also happens is that we have a party. This is us at Halloween in New York. So we all dressed up for Halloween and had a really, really good party. And what a lot of our clients also do is that they come retrospectively. So they see the opportunity now in a place like Oklahoma, and they literally say, right, I'm going to commit, but I can only come in October. Well, they don't want to wait. They don't want to let the rand devalue anymore. They don't want prices to go up. So they buy now and then they come. And Ian actually did that and came over in February, saw his house that he bought in December. They were getting $100 more than what they were promised in terms of the rental. And he was so impressed with the quality of the house and the quality of the tenants and everything else that him and his wife have ended up buying another 2 properties. So I think it's a real endorsement for what it is in terms of the quality of our partners and what the product is on the ground. So if you want to go online, there's plenty of testimonials. I've mentioned some of them, but Go and check the guys out. One of the great ones is Tony, Tony Delata, where, he likes, he's hands-on. He does a lot of stuff at home, hands-on. He doesn't like working with other partners. But he just realized, and he actually said this was the greatest trip he's ever been on. He's never learned so much in his life. And he was happy to work with the partners. He understood there was complete transparency. He felt completely comfortable and invested in a couple of properties himself. And we even had clients at home that came to the buyer's trip, Kenneth and Vicky, that were concerned about the valuations and everything else. And they just said, we couldn't have done it without you, IPS. You guys were, Ryan in particular here, you were so professional. You held our hand. You took us through the entire process. So for those of you online tonight, there is a bonus. If you take action tonight, we will actually include your purchase management fee as your purchase deposit. So you will save 20,000 Rand, which is 50%, but you must register tonight, not tomorrow, tonight. Before you go to bed tonight, 12 p.m. tonight, we will know whether you've registered or not. So there's basically two options, option 1 and 2. So option 1 is where you come on the buyer's trip. Option 2 is where you give us a mandate. You need to put down 5,000 Rand tonight. It is fully refundable for 24 hours. So for any excuse you want it refunded within 24 hours, all that does is actually book your place on the bus in terms of where you are. And then you would need to pay the remaining 15,000 by EFT in 24 hours. And then option 3 is also a 50% discount tonight. So if you want to follow us digitally, where Brendan's going to be uploading and live streaming everything, then it's 1,000 Rand. But that's only for tonight again. So just in terms of what to do next, select your option. Choose which one you want. Come with us. There's only 5 seats left on the bus. We've already got everything booked. There's 5 seats left on the bus. So if you want to come with us, book your seat now. Get on the bus. Take action, because we need to start moving on getting your flights and your visas booked. Take action. Option 2 is the remote investor. Funny enough, there's only so many remote mandates we can take, because when we get there, we only ever see between, say, 10 and 12 decent properties in any one area. So if we've got a certain number of investors on the bus, we can only take a certain number of mandates. And we've only got 4 mandates left. So if you want Brendan and I to be there, to be your ears and eyes on the ground, there's only 4 mandates left. And in terms of the spectator investor, there's only 12 logins and left, basically, because of the bandwidth issues and everything else. So for those of you who want to reserve your spot, go to this website, usabuyerstour.com/invest. And if you could please, Ryan, just type that in and just email it as in the chat box so that people can click on it. For me, that's extremely important. Now, we're going to timestamp it. So the first come, first serve. As I say, there is a full money-back guarantee. So you've got 24 hours. If for any reason you speak to your wife or you speak to your husband or you can't get leave or whatever the reason is. But the bottom line is it takes the opportunity to not miss out. And if you've got questions, please enter your phone number in the chat box now or email us on usabuyerstrip@ipsinvest.com and we will call you. Now, obviously, if you put your phone number in or if you send your email, we can't necessarily guarantee that there'll be spots available. There's only very limited spots. We're going only, in 2 weeks' time now, and so time is running out. But really, from Ryan's side and from John's side, it's been absolutely awesome having you online. I know there were a lot of questions that were posted. If you could please just put your number in and your name, and then someone will phone you. If you don't mind, we will actually give you a call tonight. If we can't get a hold of you tonight, we will phone you tomorrow. So if you're interested, step 1 is literally choose your option. Step 2 is go to that website. We use a system there called PayFast. It's a South African system. It takes a Rand deposit off your credit card. And as I say, there's a 24-hour, refund or whatever if there's any problems. And if you've got any questions, please put your name in and someone can contact you, or send us an email and someone could contact you. From my side, Ryan, there's a huge amount of questions, but I prefer to deal with people on a one-to-one basis from here. So if they could put their name and number in or send us an email, and we will get one of our investment consultants to get back to them and actually answer their questions. Because again, we want to provide people with a bespoke solution. We want to understand their concern. We want to understand their need and then provide them with a solution. Is there anything that I've forgotten, John or Ryan, from your guys' perspective?
I'd actually like to just point out, look, there's a lot of information there. We're all available now this evening. It's still quite early in the UK for me. So if you've got any questions, just type your number in now and we'll call you back straight away. The other thing is, for those of you online still, I appreciate you being online. I would actually appreciate if you could give us a feedback on a scale of 1 to 10. How interested are you in investing in the USA today? So 10 would be really good to go. You're ready to invest. 1 is, for whatever reason, maybe it's you don't have money or whatever the case is, then put that in. So I'd appreciate if you could all put in a number between 1 and 10, giving us an indication of where you are in relation to being ready to invest and keen to invest right now. I think John's actually stepped off our line, Scott. So yeah, it's just us. But no, fantastic. But I enjoyed the parts in the beginning, and I think it really reinforces what it is we're all about, and our credibility, from the sense that we invest in our partners first, and then we invest in property second, and that's always been crucial. That's been our philosophy. So thanks for putting this together.
No, perfect. I agree with you, Ryan. I just want to send through that link quickly in the chat box. So give me 2 seconds here, just for.
I've actually sent that through.
Have you sent it through already? Okay. So if people know, the chat box is in the top right corner. I see there that 4 is asked about Wealth Migrate. I'm actually sending out an email and a video for if you're interested. So let me know. So really, guys, there's a huge amount of people. Please put in your names. I can see there's a number of bookings coming in. I really don't want you to miss out. It's not a case of trying to be a hard sale or anything else. There's just limited capacity. There's only so much people that can sit on a bus. There's only so much space we got. There's only so much good quality stuff that our partners can find. And so really, Brendan and I are limited by capacity when we're on the ground. And obviously the rest of the team with Ryan and Yaku, we're all coordinating with Teresa and Relene and Kristen and the whole team to really provide the best experience, the most professional experience. So go online, make your bookings. And if you are interested in a phone call, please just put your name and number in, or send us an email to USA Buyers Trip at rpsinvest.com, and we will get back to you with any questions you've got. And if we can't get back to you tonight, we will get back to you tomorrow, and we'll do our best to really assist. Ryan, if there's nothing else from you, then I would like to just finish with 2 quotes, basically. And the one quote came from Nelson Mandela, and I actually heard it last week, and some of you saw it at the Buyers Trip. And he said, you can't give a man freedom by giving him money. You can only give him freedom by teaching him how to create money. And I think it's such a wonderful quote, and I would just take it to another level, where I believe you can only give a man freedom by teaching him how to create global wealth. Because when you've got global wealth, you can have anything you want in life. You can live anywhere you want. You can send your kids to any university. You can do whatever you want in terms of your lifestyle. So for me, that is absolutely critically important. And then I learned something that is very important. Sorry, I see here I've made a mistake. The email is actually Buyers Trip. Just give me 2 seconds here. No, I don't want to cancel. Cancel webinar. No, just hang on. We don't want to do anything. Cancel. So I just wanted to go down to the end there quickly. So the webinar should still be running for all of you. But on this one here, okay, this should be Buyers Trip at IPS Invest. Not quite sure why is wrong, but anyway, just so that you've got it right there. So it's Buyers Trip. So there we are. We've got it right now for you. So if I just go back, but really, people say to me, okay, well, Scott, that's great. I want to create global wealth. How do I get involved? It's hell of a difficult. It's hell of a hard. And I was privileged enough to spend this weekend and to meet and spend some time with Robert Gumede. Now, Robert Gumede has 14,000 employees. He's a billionaire in US dollar terms. He's one of the few billionaires in South Africa. He's a global investor. And he had a quote, which I think is so pertinent to American property. And Ryan, I would love your analogy when I'm finished with this. He says, the best time to climb on an elephant is when it's on its knees. And then when it rises, you rise with it. Ladies and gentlemen, America.
Sounds good.
And American property has been on its knees. It is rising. We've got an opportunity now to get on that elephant, to create global wealth, and to have all the freedom that you want for you and your family going forward. So if you're interested, please go reserve your spot at that website, put your name and number in, and our team will be phoning. Send an email if you would like. We look forward to chatting to you. We look forward to helping you. We look forward to helping you invest with confidence. Thank you so much, Ryan. It's been fantastic having you online. Thank you to everyone else that's been online and sorry it's taken so long. It's just so much to share. And for those of you who've got questions, we'll be getting back to you as soon as possible. It's been an honor and a privilege, as always. Good night. See you soon.